Hey guys, Jim and Chris back just with another update. I wanted to talk to you today about 1031 exchanges. Now, some of you know a little bit of my history, but I started my investing career way back when, about 24 years ago, in a town called Bakersfield, California. It was great for investing. Saw that the writing was on the wall, wasn't sure what was happening. I wanted to go to a better fundamentals long term, and I picked Northeast Florida. So many years ago, I used something called a 1031 exchange, which means I was able to sell some of my properties in California and then rebuy here in Florida without paying any tax. Everything was tax deferred. So it was a great way for me to transfer some of my wealth with a lot better landlord laws, less taxes, to Florida using 1031 exchange. And a number of our clients are doing the same thing right now. So Chris and I wanted to talk to you about how 1031s work and the advantages that you might see for yourself the same way I experienced when I left California and came here to Florida. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the overall rules and layout of how a 1031 works?
Absolutely. I got to give a disclaimer first, though. I am not a CPA. So,
or a lawyer.
Or a lawyer.
Just personal experience here.
So, one of the things that, whenever you get into a 1031 situation, you definitely want to consult your CPA and a 1031 exchange expert because there's a lot of rules you got to follow. We're just going to touch on a few of them right here so you have the general details and understand what it all involves. But it can be very, very, very beneficial for preserving capital and building your portfolio without having to give so much money to the government. So a few rules. First of all, you have to identify a new property. So, well, let me back up a little bit. Jim mentioned how he did it before. When you're selling a property, you have to find what they call a like-kind property. You could be selling, and that term is a little bit loose. So you could be selling a raw piece of land and buying rental properties, or selling rental properties and buying a raw piece of land. That counts as a like-kind exchange. So it's real estate for real estate. It doesn't have to be the exact same type of real estate. But let's say that you're selling, your raw piece of land, and that land is going to close, on April 1st. Well, from April 1st, the day that you close on that land, you have to identify the exchange property within 45 days, meaning the property that you're going to purchase has to be identified in a 45-day period. Real important to remember, though, at the closing, the money can never transfer to you. It has to go to your what's called a 1031 intermediary, and this is a person that you're going to want to talk to when you get set up and you're getting ready to do this transaction. They're going to give you a lot of knowledge on the specific details, but this is the person that's going to hold your money. So when your closing happens, the money goes directly to them. It cannot go to you at all, and they hold your money until you both identify and are ready to close on the replacement property. So within 45 days of that closing, you have to identify something else, put it under contract, and identify it. Make sure that it's clear what you have identified. Then you have 6 months. So again, 6 months from the closing, 180 days, to close on that property. So it gives you time for due diligence. If it's a land deal, or if you're buying a rental property, it gives it time for it to be built. For whatever the case may be, you've got that additional window of time of 6 months until you have to close on the property. If you do that and you follow all the rules, and we're going to go into a few more, that's how you're able to defer your taxes. Now, a couple more details. One is you have to use the same amount of money that you sold your property for. So if you sold it for $400,000, you've got to buy a piece of property for $400,000 or more, or the portion that you don't use is going to be taxed. Also, you need to make sure that the debt you're putting on the property is the same amount of debt as the previous property, or the difference in the debt is going to be taxed. So for instance, if you had $1 million loan on the property you're selling, and you say, well, hey, I want to put, less down on this next property, so you only get a $900,000 or more down on this next property, so you only get a $900,000 loan, you're going to be taxed on that $100,000 gap between the previous loan and the new loan. So there's some intricacies in here. That's why you need to talk to your CPA. That's why you need to talk to your intermediary, your 1031 intermediary. But it is a great way, if done right, to not pay that capital gains tax that you're otherwise going to pay to the government, which means that you're able to buy and build your portfolio. So 20% of your money in any sale transaction that you were going to do was going to go back to the IRS. Now you're able to take that 20%, buy more property, and continue to build that portfolio. Now, again, this is all deferred, so at some point you may sell all that property and you'll have to pay tax when you sell that. But you've been able to amass a much larger portfolio, meaning you're putting a lot more dollars to work, taking advantage of the growth of real estate and the appreciation of real estate over time without having any sort of dilution due to tax payments.
Yeah.
So, Jim,
Well, and this is exactly what I did. So at the time when I sold in the early 2000s, I was able to sell a property in so what 1031 really did for me was move equity forward with better cash flow. And let me explain. Because what I was selling for in Central California in the early 2000s, I was able to sell properties there. One property, let's say one property I would sell, I would 1031 exchange everything forward, and I was able to buy 3 properties in Jacksonville. And you know what the craziest part was? Each of these properties almost rented for the same amount monthly that my one property in California did. See, the rents in California hadn't kept going up with all of the equity that I had built. So I said, hold on, if I move my money from California to Florida, I'm able to almost make 3 times the rental income monthly and not have to pay any tax to do that. And that's what I did with my portfolio leaving California. Not to mention, you know, now I don't have any state income tax, and the landlord laws, well, they're a little better. I hate to tell you for my California buddies, but they are. And so I was able to move it forward. And that's what we're seeing a lot of our clients do. You might have a property you're looking to sell in California, which, man, you've done great on the equity, but the rents just haven't followed. And when you start to look at our performance, you say, wait a minute, I could move into 2 or 3 of these, be making 2 to 3 times more the rental every month and not pay any tax. So you're just moving equity forward. And that's basically what I did. And that's what I loved about the 1031 exchange. And by able to save that long-term capital gains, that goes right into propelling your wealth forward. So
Yeah,
I've been a big fan of that.
Well, and and let's say that the capital gains, depending on where you are, let's just call it it's between 20 and 25%. Let's call it 25% for quick math. If you put that in perspective, not only did you get 3x
the amount of properties.
So you got 3x the properties on the amount, and you were getting 3 times the rent. But let's not forget that you also got an extra property.
Yeah.
So if you sold a property again for $1 million, well now you're coming down here and you're buying 3 properties. That's $750,000. Well, if you were paying taxes on that, $250,000.
I wouldn't have had the money for it. Yeah.
$250,000 would have gone to the government. So really, that 4th house on $1 million transaction is free.
Yeah.
So it's when you look at it that way, it's pretty unbelievable leverage.
Yeah. The reason, this is why we brought it up to you guys. I personally used this about it's 20-something years ago now, and it did really well for me. We're seeing clients now in some of our higher priced California markets do the same. If it's something we can help you with, we're excited to help. And what's really great about this, again, the timelines are very strict. You get an intermediary, they're not going to do any favors. You are identifying and closing within 6 months. Those are the rules in order to be able to get the full exchange benefits. But we couldn't have done that for you 2 years ago in the pandemic because our build times were so much longer. But now, we have properties ready in less than 90 days. So we can fulfill 1031 exchange requirements, where a lot of you over the years, 3 years ago, can we do a 1031 exchange? And Chris and I hated to do it, but we had to turn the business away. We don't flirt with 1031 deadlines. We never would want to miss one. We never have. So we were really excited now that we have this new system, with Sumitomo coming aboard. It's very exciting, and we're able to actually fulfill 1031 exchanges. So if this is something we can do for you, we'd love to help you with it. One thing I wanted to add too, the great thing about identifying is you can identify as many properties as you'd like, and then once it comes up to the 45 days, you can choose your favorite properties. So you can identify a multiple of properties. You can identify 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties and only choose 2 of them. That's the nice thing about the identification period too. So working with us, since we have a good inventory, you can identify different properties and then make a final decision on the properties. But again, it's really exciting to see our clients doing the same thing I kind of fell backwards into so many years ago and using the same thing. So if we can help you with this, or you want to learn more, again, we always recommend you talk to your accountant and also a professional 1031 intermediary, and we can refer you to a few. But it's a great way to move your equity forward, possibly 2 or 3x your monthly cash flow coming off of that equity, and avoid tax, which is one of the biggest proponents to moving wealth forward. I mean, Warren Buffett talks about it all the time. So we'd love to help you. Any more questions, please reach out. We'd love to talk more, and we'll look forward to our next video.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.